Hopefully you can hear me. I made a bit of a pig's ear there of that whole transition from the starting soon page to the to saying welcome. And normally I'm a lot better than that. Normally I just crash in, but I was trying to do something very nice, and it went a little bit wrong. Anyway, look, we are here. I'm going to share with you something which may have an impact on the stream today. My wife has had her AstraZeneca jab today. We drove up the road to Sriracha, and she was injected in the arm. And she's oops, that's Father David Price liking the stream, which is very, very good to see. And so she had the jab, and she came back. We drove back in the car, and she said that she was feeling a little bit strange. She said it feels like she's hungover. And by the time we got home, she was really tired, very thirsty, very dehydrated, and she had to just go to bed. Now, she's been asleep for a good few hours now, but our little boy, Sebastian, who's 4.5, who slept in the car on the way home, is not tired at all, and he keeps running in and out in between the bedroom, and at the moment he's in with Mum. Once he falls asleep, I carry him through to his own bedroom and his own bed. But at the moment he's keeping busy on the bed. He's got lots of little toy animals. I've put a children's movie on the TV, which he likes, some children's superhero type movie, and Mum's asleep, sound asleep. So we'll see. If he does come in, there are two options as far as I see it. I can ignore him and just carry on, and he can see that I'm busy, which is something he's used to when I'm working during the daytime. So, I can't just stop everything when the door opens. The second option, if he persists, is my plan is to accommodate him somehow. All right, so he may well end up standing in front of me while I read. Okay, so that's my plan. I mean, it's not the best plan, but it is a plan, as they say. So anyway, so let's get back to what we normally do, and I'm welcoming you all. First of all, I'm welcoming you. Saying if you haven't been here before, you're very, very welcome. If you are a repeat viewer, if you have visited us before, then welcome back. I do need to say a very big thank you to Tim Ray, 1945, who has followed us, and so that's a really good thing. We need as many followers as we can get at the moment. Obviously we're not an associate yet, and if we're ever going to make partner, we need followers. So that's wonderful to see that someone new has checked in and followed us, that's great news. Now, the plan today, as is usual on a Friday, is to go through the Church Times headlines, pick up a couple of articles if there's anything that's very, very interesting, and then after that we'll jump straight into the readings, and we'll carry on with the 3 books we're studying at the moment. One thing I do need to tell you is that from the third week of September, the Sarum course will be kicking in. And so our usual agenda of readings might change. What I might be doing is involving everyone in, whatever assignments they've got us doing, whatever reading they've got us doing. So it might chop and change a bit more. Instead of going through a whole book together, it may well be that we dip into lots of different books as I go through the course. And, of course, I'll tell you what I've learned, and and why these books are relevant, etc. So that's my plan. I think the stream will evolve as I begin to understand what the course requires. Okay, now so that's that. So now let us then. Oh, I should also say welcome to Alpha Quanga, who is watching on Facebook at the moment. So welcome, Alpha. You're particularly welcome. Now let's shoot over, as I said, over to the Church Times, and as I also suggested earlier, my little boy has just wandered in. You've just wandered in, haven't you? You've just come in. So what do you want to do? Do you want to stand there? You're going to stand there. Okay, you can sit there, no problem. Okay, don't touch that. You can sit there, no problem. Do you want to say hello? You say yes, hello. Right, okay, so Sebastian's joined us, and we're going to look at the Church Times headlines. And, oops, well, we're looking at this, and the first headline that jumps out at us is that the Bishop of Ebbsfleet has quit to go over to Rome. Now, I can imagine that there's... Oops. No, don't do that. Don't do that. You're winking at Daddy. You're showing me that you can... You can go back to bed.
No.
Go to Mummy. Go and see Mummy. Or you can stay here. It's up to you. Go on, good boy. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Okay. Now, what we might have to do, we might have to just help him go back to see Mummy. Okay? So, what we're going to quickly do, okay, not for too long, we're just going to say we'll be right back, okay, and then we'll jump back to where we were just now. Okay, so give me I think 2 or 3 minutes. All right. So here we are. We'll have a quick interlude. Okay, so we're back in the room, and Sebastian has decided he really doesn't want to lay down, so that's okay. We're going to just deal with that and accommodate him, which is what I thought we might have to do. It's the worst case scenario. Now, we've got the Bishop of Ebbsfleet quits to go over to Rome. The Bishop of Ebbsfleet, the Right Reverend Jonathan Goodall, has resigned to become a Roman Catholic. Lambeth Palace confirmed on Friday. So, I mean, you know, various high-level folk have over the years quit and gone over to Rome. I know it's news. It is news. I don't think it's earth-shattering. I think good luck to him. If that's where he's going to be happy, then everyone should pray for him and wish him well. That's my view. Let's carry on. We'll have a look. Right. So this is interesting. Religious organisations demonstrate blatant hypocrisy and moral failings in purporting to teach right from wrong, yet failing to prevent or respond to child sexual abuse. So, the Independent Inquiry into Child Sexual Abuse says, so this is earth-shattering, right? Because there's a lot of folk who have done a great deal of work over the last, well, I mean, we could say 40 years to try to protect children more and more. The safeguarding training, which I've had to do, interestingly enough, I can't remember if I told you this, I've had to do 3 different online safeguarding courses provided by the Church of England because I'm doing an online course. You go on. Yeah. Go on then. No, go on then. Now, go on. Go yourself. Go and see Mummy. You go and see Mummy. Now.
No.
No, you're going to stay here. Okay. So, yeah, a lot of work has been done over the last 40 years. I've had to do 3 courses for an online course I'm doing with Sarum College, and I mean, I'm having beyond contact with my own son, and in church during service here in Thailand, where we have a couple of children who come along regularly. I don't see children, right? I only see these in my normal day-to-day life. I teach online. They're kids, but there's rigorous safeguarding in that very often during the classes, the company which I work for, they log into the e-class to monitor what's going on, exactly for that reason. So, of course, in a very large organisation, which the Church of England is, for example, there are always, be careful, there are always going to be a few rotten eggs who, are able to either use the system or who fall through the net. Right, and that's it. That's how do you create a system? I mean, it's almost like terrorism, isn't it? It's a similar situation. If somebody wants to break through almost any kind of security, if they're cunning enough and determined enough, then they will. And how do you? Sexual predators are extremists. By definition, how do you rigorously prevent them from doing what they want to do? Well, you can try. You can put everything in place. I think what really undermined all of the efforts is this notion that somebody could be charged and even convicted for child sexual offences, and then go on to be posted by the church, and it doesn't matter whether it's Church of England or any of the other big organisations, into a new parish. How can they be moved around and continue to be licensed? It's beyond belief, and I think most level-headed people would agree that was, an egregious failure, for sure. I think the likelihood of that kind of thing going on now, going forwards, I think is remote, extremely remote. As I say, I think I celebrated online when my Criminal Records Bureau check came back from the UK clear. I even had to have an enhanced Criminal Records Bureau check to do an online course. It's, and I say it's with a little bit of incredulity because you know, I'm going to be joining a gang of people on Zoom classes or whatever, Zoom lectures. I don't think there are children involved. I think it's a bunch of you know, other ordinands or lay readers who are going to be learning. Anyway, interesting stuff. Charities of all political shades argue against £20 cut in universal credit. I agree with them. I mean, this idea of you know, those who are unable to work for whatever reason, or those who are the working poor, who for whatever reason, because of their low income, they are eligible for. Oops. No. They are eligible for universal credit. The idea that they're going to take a £20 cut. Look, Daddy's speaking. Shh, 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 shh. I like you speaking. I love you speaking, but not when Daddy's speaking. Not when Daddy's speaking. Okay. Now, so the idea of a £20 cut in their weekly universal credit payments, it must be beyond imagination for so many. No, you can't get my attention like that by shouting, because Daddy's busy. You know Daddy's working. Now, so we're going to carry on. Now, renewed calls to provide sanctuary to Afghans. You know, no one who's watched this thing unfold could disagree with that, right? Any of the nations who were involved in the bombings. Oops, leave that alone. Okay. Okay. Anyone involved in the. What are you doing? What are you doing? Anyone involved in the war in Afghanistan as allies, you're going to have to go to bed. If you're tired, go to bed. Go and be with Mummy. Go on. Now, let's carry on. Now, European church leaders urge governments to provide shelter. That's a very good idea. I agree with all of that. As you know, I think I have mentioned this a couple of times on the stream. I worked with refugees for about 5 years, from 1993, actually maybe a bit more, from 93 through to 99. And that's when I stopped working with refugees and instead worked with you know, entrenched rough sleepers. Working with refugees was a privilege, but it also taught me a great deal about how fragile our lives are. Most of the people I worked with were, you know, well, I suppose 50% of them were normal folk, I would say. You know, you know, coming from the average job, they wanted to get jobs being cleaners or whatever. The other half were being targeted in their home countries because of their politics or because of work they had done, and they were typically, you know, very able people. And I think I believe in all cases that refugees enhance a society. Certainly in all of the research, in all of the economics research, it's very clear that refugees, when they do go on to pay tax in their host country, they contribute more in general than the host country citizens on average. So refugees tend to make countries, they make a profit, right? So it's worth supporting refugees and asylum seekers, and especially worth assisting them to become, you know, in our case, British citizens, but also any other citizens, I think. Now, I need to explain something, because I think it's worthwhile explaining that Sebastian, I think I've spoken a couple of times about my boy. He tends not to talk too much. But over the last week, he has started singing away to himself, okay? And I remember reading many years ago that children tend to dance before they can walk, and they draw before they can write, and they sing before they can speak. And so it gives me great joy, even though right now it's completely distracting and inappropriate. I actually think it's wonderful when he makes these little noises, and he's got little tones going on, and he's experimenting with how his voice sounds. It gives me great hope that means that, sooner or later, especially with this new school thing that might be offered through the Father Ray Foundation, he may well go on to be able to speak and communicate like any other child. And so I'm very excited by that. That's going to be a good thing. I'm talking about you. So there we are. Now, oops. Oh, thank you. Are you a bit warm, are you? You're a little bit warm, are you? Okay. Now, let's have a look. I think we're going to go on now. No. We're going to go on now to the life and work of a priest. Okay? We're going to read this book. So that's what this is for. This thing that's behind you. That's what this is for. And we're reading from where it says, it's page 52. Okay? And we're reading from where it says specialist subjects. So let's then have a look. Specialist subjects. Some priests will happily commit themselves to continuing study in a specific discipline or around a specific subject. They are then likely to be used as tutors in reader training, education for discipleship, courses, and ministerial training schemes. This is both valuable for the courses and refreshing for the priests. It varies the priestly diet and keeps turning over the theological soil. It also subverts the unhealthy split that easily recurs between the parish and the academy. The tradition of the scholar priests might be difficult to maintain among the massive demands of contemporary ministry, but hopefully it won't be relinquished entirely. It needs to take... You have a look there. Go on then. You find the tiger. No. It needs to take... No. Daddy's busy. Daddy's reading. No. It needs to take different forms today. Not many parish priests... There's the man. Now, Sebastian. Okay. Not many parish priests will be writing cutting-edge theology, but many will be contributing to the I can see. I know. Right. So, it needs to take different forms today. Not many parish priests will be writing cutting-edge theology, but many will be contributing to the intellectual life of the diocese in their roles in teaching, training, and supervising. More and more students for ordained or lay ministries are looking for supervised... You found the tiger! You found the tiger! I know, well done. So he's got a little book, and he always tries to show me the tiger. So we have to at least acknowledge that because he found it. So that was quite good. More and more students for ordained or lay ministries are looking for supervised placements, and having such a student can be enlivening for both priest and parish. Supervision is itself a skilled art and a fascinating process. You can take that. If you want that one, you can have a look at that one. There's also need for mentors, senior friends, ministry consultants, mission accompaniers, and many more. In other words, there's enough work for everybody. Now, I want to talk about this because really, credit has to be given to in the first instance, Father David. Okay, Father David Price, who is my supervising priest, who is overseeing my formation in context, and will be increasingly, I'm sure, communicating with Sarum College, and more and more, no doubt, Sarum College will be communicating with him. Now, he's gone out now. Sebastian has left the room, but no doubt he'll be back. So, okay. Now, so Father David, I speak to him every day, and he provides a huge amount of support to me, as well as, and we need to give credit to, what is it? Okay, so let's just share this with the stream. Let's just share what you're looking at. You're looking at a book which is all about Thailand's food, and you're looking at the section called Fish and Seafood. That's a fish. Fish, you like fish. Now, the other people involved, and not to the same extent, but hugely involved, Father Tom, who's the former chaplain of the congregation here in Pattaya in Thailand. And I meet with Father Tom usually every Tuesday, all things being equal, and we talk about Tillich. And I also get a huge amount of support from Liz Shepherd, who's the church warden here. And so when it talks about, having somebody, supervision in itself, a skilled art, fascinating prayers, also need for mentors, senior friends, ministry consultants. Absolutely, this completely rings true, and I know for sure that from the off, my having Father David Price, overseeing my formation, directing my formation. What? We're going to have a quick break because the boy needs to go somewhere, so we'll be very quick. Okay? Okay. Go now. I don't know whether that's going to be the last time that he comes in. I hope it is. He's now laying on a bed with, even though he's 4.5, at night time he tends to drink from these little baby bottles. So he's got a bottle of milk, and normally that's his go to sleep ritual. So we may well have done what we need to do to get rid of him for the moment, if that's the nicest way I can say it, really. Anyway, right, so yes, I was saying everything that John Pritchard writes here rings true, and we're going on to read the 6th day of ministry. 6th day ministries. Another form of intellectual vitality can be released by the encouragement of every priest to have a 6th day ministry. This is an area of interest in ministry which is genuinely life-enhancing for the priest and potentially valuable. Now, shh, Daddy's working. Okay? Life-enhancing for the priest and potentially valuable for the wider church. He or she might have developed an interest or expertise in the environment, godly play, creative writing, Celtic spirituality, the Orthodox Church, leading retreats, urban theology, alternative worship, fresh expressions of church, overseas links, film and faith, internet evangelism, or 100 other interests. It's a constant source of joyful amazement to me to discover the range of wild and wonderful interests that people have. The church should let them thrive. This would mean encouraging priests to pursue those interests and to seek further expertise through courses and memberships, and then to offer their enthusiasm to the wider church at deanery, diocesan, or even national level. This has the dual advantage both of benefiting the church and also giving priests permission to use an enthusiasm as a gift to themselves and to others. 5 days, 5 days are for the parish or other priestly task. The 6th day is for the specialism. Having made a case for these specialist ministries, however, I also want to affirm the distinctive specialism of the priest as a generalist. There are few people in society today who have at the heart of their role the task of holding disparate things together. Understandably, society has gone down the path of increased specialisation, with people knowing more and more about less and less. Parish priests, on the other hand, are expected to think holistically about the health and well-being of a community. They have to keep examining the big picture in the light of a multitude of details. Priests specialise in being generalists, in holding together the complexities of a community's life and seeing it in the light of God's purpose. The priest pops up everywhere because nothing is outside God's interest, and God's vision for our flourishing is always more inclusive and breathtaking than we have ever imagined. I like that. I think that gives me a huge amount of hope, especially considering where we live here in Pattaya, in Thailand. The fact that we have a very diverse parish, lots of hotels, lots of expats, lots of Thai people, lots of, in usual time, what was that, a snake or was that a dinosaur? Was that a dinosaur? I think it was. So lots of tourists, in normal circumstances, and all of those other jobs that are dependent on the hospitality and hotel industries. So very complex parish, really, and very transient. So even the Thai population, really, they'll come and work here, and then they will leave and go back to their own province. They'll go home to their province. So it's a very transient population. Very interesting. Okay. Now I think we'll leave John Pritchard there, and we will come back next time, which is tomorrow, to read Resources for Theological Refreshment. That's on page 54. We'll do that tomorrow. Now, let's go on to the next book, which is How Not to Read the Bible. And I think we were up to Act 3 on page 48. And let's have a look, because we're looking at this kind of synopsis of the Bible. It's the synopsis of the Bible which Dan Kimball has put together and says everything in summary, right? And I found it very interesting, very, very interesting. So let's have a look. So we've got Act 3. It says redemption initiates. Despite the continued spread of sin and the resulting fallout, God has love for his creation, and he remembers his promise of someone who will come to defeat the evil that has been released. He reveals that he is going to enact this rescue plan through one family chosen from among the various people of the world. The people of Abraham. No. Shh. Don't do that. Don't touch the book. Now, the people of Abraham, who later become the nation of Israel. Eventually, as the storyline of the Old Testament develops and the plot progresses, we meet Jesus, who is born through Abraham's lineage. He is the one promised, the one all of this is pointing to. The radiation symbol here communicates the continued fallout due to the effects of the fall. No. The infection and contamination of sin is still present in all. It's still present in all human beings, and it affects the world they live in. Much of the storyline of the Old Testament shows us that people consistently turn away from God's guidance and trust themselves over him. The third act of the Bible story, the portion from Genesis 12 through the book of Malachi at the end of the Old Testament, has three movements within this act. Act 3, Movement 1. God chooses Israel to bless the nation. God makes a promise, a covenant, to a man named Abraham. God says he will bring Abraham into a land where his presence will be, and his family will become a nation that brings God's blessings to the world. The family grows, but they become enslaved in Egypt. As a nation, Egypt embodies all that's gone wrong with humanity: idolatry, worshipping false gods, injustice, slavery, and giving in to evil. The story continues as God raises up a descendant of Abraham named Moses and defeats Egypt's evil, rescuing his people and bringing them to Mount Sinai. God uses Moses to lead Israel and enters into a covenant, a formal agreement like a contract with the Israelites. They are invited to obey the terms of the covenant, which start with the 10 Commandments and include several hundred other ways God sets in place for Israel to remain distinct from their neighbours, who worship false gods. By being faithful to these commands, the people will become God's priestly representatives to the nation, which is where we find many of the very crazy sounding laws and practices that confuse people today. These laws were given to Israel, commands about not eating shrimp or not having tattoos. They seem odd and strange to us today, but to Israel at that time, these laws made sense. And they were what was needed at this time in their history and their relationship to God. Act 3, Movement 2. So actually, let's just go back to that. I think that's brilliant, right? It really does sum up so much of. I mean, I know it's wrong to maybe it's not wrong. It makes the Bible accessible by reading it in a way which has been made so simple. I can't help but think that a translation of this would really help my efforts to, for example, firstly, to allow my wife to understand the story that's in the book, because although there are Thai Bibles, asking, saying just read that isn't going to do it. This is a bit, it's been written in a way which is a bit like a teaser, and I think I could very easily get these translated into Thai, not necessarily word for word, but the gist of it. And if we got the gist of it translated, I think it could be very useful for our congregation. Increasingly in the future, my wife isn't going to be the only Thai wife who doesn't really understand what's in the Bible. And so I think that could be very useful. We could use it for other wives or partners as well. Now, let's carry on. Act 3, Movement 2. Israel's royal failure. Joshua, Judges, and Samuel, and Kings. Right, so Joshua, Judges, Samuel, and Kings. So Israel enters the land God had promised to Abraham. They are to clear the land and to drive out those who refuse to worship the one true God. But they blow it again, and they begin worshipping the gods of the nations around them, leading to further corruptions and injustice. We see Israel committing acts of slavery, polygamy, and violence, and human beings putting themselves first instead of God. Even their best kings, David and Solomon, fail miserably. Eventually, the leaders of Israel run the nation into the ground. God warns them over and over to turn back to him, but they repeatedly refuse. Then God allows the tribes of Israel to be conquered by the reigning superpowers of the day, the Babylonians. Most of the Israelites are dragged into exile and captivity in Babylon. The irony of the story is that God's chosen people have shown that they are no different than the surrounding nations, who, in their rebellion, are ruining God's good world. Act 3, Movement 3, Israel's exile and prophetic hope. No, let Daddy just do that. Right, okay, now. Okay. Despite Israel's sin, all was not lost. Among the people of Israel was a vocal minority called the prophets. They had warned the people of Israel's coming downfall, but they also made it clear that this wasn't the end of the story for God's people. God had made a promise to them to restore divine blessing to the world through someone who was yet to be born, a descendant of Abraham and of King David. God's promise was still in force, and though a future leader, he would rescue the world, and through a future leader, he would rescue the world. The stage is set for the coming of Jesus, the promised leader. Now we have, it says, intermission, a 400-year period between the Old and New Testaments. At this point in the story, there is a 400-year period during which no new scriptures are written. The Bible goes silent. Israel waits, hoping for the promise to be fulfilled, for a leader to be born who will rescue and redeem them. God is still active, and things are happening, but the events aren't considered inspired scriptures, so they are not included in the Bible. Now, I think that's probably enough of how not to read the Bible. We've taken it just past the intermission, and I think tomorrow, probably without our accompaniment here, we will pick up from Act 4, okay? I think that's the plan. I think that's a good idea. So I'm going to move my little peg down so I can see exactly where I'm jumping in next time. And we are now going to go to, we're at that time of the night and we're probably a little bit later than the normal time of the night. We're at that time of the night when we're going over to Paul Tillich's systematic theology, okay? And as usual, Sebastian, as usual, we will give credit. Are you singing again? We'll give credit to Father Tom, who is encouraging me on a daily basis to read Tillich. So we are starting Tillich on page 189, and it's section 7 of Being and the Question of God. And we're starting today, section 7 is called The Finite and the Infinite. So, being limited by non-being is finitude. Non-being appears as the not yet of being and as the no more of being. It confronts that which is with a definite end. This is true of everything except being itself, which is not a thing. As the power of being, being itself cannot have a beginning and an end. Otherwise, it would have arisen out of non-being. But non-being is literally nothing except in relation to being. Being precedes non-being in ontological validity, as the word non-being itself indicates. Being is the beginning without a beginning, the end without an end. It is its own beginning and end. The initial power of everything, that is. However, everything which participates in the power of being is mixed with non-being. It is being in process of coming from and going toward non-being. It is finite. Both the basic ontological structure and the ontological elements imply... Hold on, I've only got one hand now. We're holding the weight of the boy, who's obviously very tired but doesn't want to go away because Mummy's already asleep, and Daddy is the only one doing anything. So implied finitude, selfhood, individuality, dynamics, and freedom all include manifoldness, definiteness, differentiation, and limitation. To be something is not to be something else. To be here and now in the process of becoming is not to be there and then. All categories of thought and reality express this situation. Now, hold on, all categories, this situation, where are we? Sorry, you've lost me now. Right, this situation, to be something is to be finite. So, finitude is experienced on the human level. On the human level, non-being is experienced as a threat to being. The end is anticipated. The process of self-transcendence carries a double meaning in each of its moments. At one and the same time, it is an increase and a decrease in the power of being. In order to experience its finitude, man must look at himself from the point of view of a potential infinity. In order to be aware of moving toward death, man must look out over his finite being as a whole. He must, in some way, be beyond it. He must also be able to imagine infinity. And he is able to do so, although not in concrete terms, but only as an abstract possibility. The finite self faces a world. The finite individual has the power of universal participation. Man's vitality is united with an essential, unlimited intentionality. As finite freedom, he is involved in an embracing destiny. All the structures of finitude force finite being to transcend itself, and just for this reason to become aware of itself as finite. According to this analysis, infinity is related to finitude in a different way than the other polar elements are related to one another. As the negative character of the word indicates, it is defined by the dynamic and free self-transcendence of finite being. Infinity is a directing concept, not a constituting concept. It directs the mind to experience its own unlimited potentialities, but it does not establish the existence of an infinite being. On this basis, it is possible to understand the classical anomalies regarding the finite and the infinite character of the world. Even a physical doctrine of the finitude of space cannot keep the mind from asking what lies behind finite space. This is a self-contradictory question, yet it is inescapable. On the other hand, it is impossible to say that the world is infinite because infinity never is given as an object. Infinity is a demand, not a thing. This is the stringency of Kant's solution of the antinomies between the finite and the infinite character of time and space. Since neither time nor space is a thing, but both are forms of a thing, it is possible to transcend every finite time and every finite space without exception. But this does not establish an infinite thing in an infinite time and space. The human mind can keep going endlessly by transcending finite realities in the macrocosmic or in the microcosmic direction, but the mind itself remains bound to the finitude of its individual bearer. Infinitude is finitude transcending itself without any a priori limit. The power of infinite self-transcendence is an expression of a man's belonging to that which is beyond non-being, namely to being itself. The potential presence of the infinite, an unlimited self-transcendence, is the negation of the negative element in finitude. It is the negation of non-being. The fact that man never is satisfied with any stage of his finite development, the fact that nothing finite can hold him, although finitude is his destiny, indicates the indissoluble relation of everything finite to being itself. Being itself is not infinity. It is that which lies beyond the polarity of finitude and infinite self-transcendence. Being itself manifests itself to finite being in the infinite drive of the finite beyond itself. But being itself cannot be identified with infinity, that is, with the negation of finitude. It precedes the finite, and it precedes the infinite negation of the finite. Finitude in awareness is anxiety. Like finitude, anxiety is an ontological quality. It cannot be derived. It can only be seen and described. Occasions in which anxiety is aroused must be distinguished from anxiety itself. As an ontological quality, anxiety is as omnipresent as is finitude. Anxiety is independent of any special object which might produce it. It is dependent only on the threat of non-being, which is identical with finitude. In this sense, it has been said rightly that the object of anxiety is nothingness, and nothingness is not an object. Objects are feared. A danger, a pain, an enemy may be feared, but fear can be conquered by action. Anxiety cannot. For no finite being can conquer its finitude. Anxiety is always present, although often it is latent. Therefore, it can become manifest at any and every moment, even in situations where nothing is to be feared. The recovery of the meaning of anxiety through the combined endeavours of existential philosophy, depth psychology, neurology, and the arts is one of the achievements of the 20th century. It has become clear that fear, as related to a definite object, and anxiety as the awareness of finitude, are two radically different concepts. Anxiety is ontological, fear psychological. Anxiety is an ontological concept because it expresses finitude from inside. Here, it must be said, there is no reason for preferring concepts taken from outside to those taken from inside, according to the self-world structures. Both types are equally valid. The self being aware of itself and the self looking at its world, including itself, are equally significant for the description of this ontological structure. Anxiety is the self-awareness of the finite self as finite. The fact that it has a strongly emotional character does not remove its revealing power. The emotional element simply indicates that the totality of the finite being participates in finitude and faces the threat of nothingness. It would seem adequate, therefore, to give a description of finitude from both outside and inside, pointing to the special form of anxious awareness which corresponds to whatever special form of finitude is under consideration. Whew. So we've done that. We've done section 7 of the chapter Being and the Question of God. And we will tomorrow go on to section 8, which is called Finitude and the Categories. So let's close Paul Tillich just now. And as has become a recent custom over the last couple of days, we are going to turn now to the Lord's Prayer. And I would hope that as I say the Lord's Prayer, you can also join in. Let us pray with confidence to the Father, as our Saviour has taught us. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, for ever and ever. Amen. Now, we will then proceed to today's collect, which we've got from the dailycommonworship.com website provided by the Church of England. And it is this: O Lord Jesus Christ, Son of the living God, who at this evening hour didst rest in the sepulchre, and didst thereby sanctify the grave, to be a bed of hope to thy people. Make us so to abound in sorrow for our sins, which were the cause of thy passion. And when our bodies lie in the dust, our souls may live with thee, who livest and reignest with the Father and the Holy Ghost, one God, world without end. Amen. Now, tonight has been a little bit challenging, as I told you at the very, very beginning. My wife Susie is quite unwell as a result of having the AstraZeneca COVID jab, so she's asleep at the moment. Our little man here slept in the car on the way back from the hospital, and because of traffic, a 45-minute journey took us about 2.5 hours. There was some roadworks up by the port in between where we are and where we were coming back from, and so the traffic was murder. There were lots of ambulances, but we didn't see anything. I don't know whether there had been an accident or whether the ambulances were going onto the motorway or something. But anyway, our little man has been awake, wide awake. He doesn't look like he's going anywhere very quickly. I hope he hasn't spoilt. I know he's interrupted a couple of times, and I'm sorry for the intercessions the little intervals we've been having. But I think we've accommodated him quite well. So we've done the reading. Certainly.
Hello.
Are you saying hello even though we're about to say good night? You are, aren't you? You're saying hello even though we're about to say good night. So I will say, without further ado, is it very bright? It is, isn't it? They're very bright lights. Now we'll say, without further ado, I am going to bid you with prayers and best wishes. Bye-bye for now.